Andy, Shallal, you are the founder of Busboys and Poets.
Yes, I am.
You've run for mayor. You're very committed to DC and the Virginia area. How long have you been here living in the area?
Over 45 years.
45 years. So
Yeah.
you're about as deeply involved as you can.
I'm about as native as most people are who call themselves natives.
And in the session, in the conference, in the Q&A, you talked about the different ways we measure success.
Yeah.
In terms of a city's bond rating, but so many homeless people.
Right.
So many educated people, but so many children without food.
Right.
What were the kinds of things you were trying to, I imagine in founding your business, you were attempting to address some of these kinds of things.
Well, absolutely. I think I saw a city that was greatly divided. And that was also what motivated me to run for mayor, frankly, of the city, is I saw a city that was really divided. And a city that oftentimes doesn't speak about the divisions. It's a city that needs to talk about those divisions in order for us to be able to improve them. And so I wanted to highlight those issues. This is a city that has some of the highest educated people in the country. We have some of the most literate people in the country. We have some of the wealthiest people in the country. We have more bicycle lanes. We have great schools. We have universities that are top quality from, world-class universities.
A lot to be proud of and a lot to be motivated from.
Absolutely. And yet on the other side, we have some of the poorest people in the city. A third of the population of the district is in poverty. 40 to 60% of our kids don't graduate from school. If we were a state, our school system would be number 51. It's that bad. Our literacy rate, 15% of the people that live in the city can't read or write functionally to get a job, to fill out an application, to do an interview. There are more jobs in the city than there are people to fill them. And yet we don't have the training that's needed in order to give opportunities to those people that are desperate for jobs oftentimes. So that's why I looked at the city as a city that's in need of somebody to speak about these issues. I know politicians like to talk about AAA bond ratings, and they
like to talk about
that's
the
great.
issues that are needed to be
Wall Street loves
so.
DC. Wall Street loves DC. So we have our budget is balanced. We have leftover money. Yet we have homelessness that is out of control, and we have our schools are
You mentioned
really
some of these
problematic.
things in the conference.
Yeah.
After running for mayor, you did something about it. I mean, you founded this business. Did you found it before or after?
Yeah, I mean, before, I've
Okay.
always been connected to,
Okay.
to DC for many, many years. I love DC. I love DC culture.
And am I mistaken or correct in understanding or imagining that you're committing yourself to something like Busboys and Poets was a way of launching something that would connect you with the community and connect you with maybe advancing awareness or making some progress toward social equity, towards these things that
Yes.
mattered? And if so, in the brief time we have, how did it inform that, and how does it go about doing these?
Well, I saw, again, a city that was divided racially, and I wanted to have a place where people from different races, different cultures can come together and feel comfortable. A lot of times, I think, when you go to clubs or restaurants, they're pretty segregated for the most part. During the day, at lunchtime, people work together, so they eat together sometimes. But at nighttime, people go their ways. And very few places you have, even in a city that's predominantly African American, very few places you have that have actually black people eating. And so for me, it was, well, how can I create a place?
Even restaurants.
Even restaurants. I'm talking about restaurants. So I was trying to create a place where people can feel comfortable coming to. People from different cultures and different races and different backgrounds and feel uplifted.
Interesting.
Feel like they can come in there and see themselves there without feeling uncomfortable. So that was the impetus behind Busboys and Poets. And so we started with that idea, so we wanted to make it part of our purpose, part of our mission. So we call it a place where racial and cultural connections come together and are consciously uplifted.
So are there more than one location of Busboys?
Yeah, there are.
I'm fairly new to the
Yeah,
area.
there are 4 locations, and we're in the process of opening 2 more.
Okay.
And
so the menu, is it reflect different cultures?
Yes.
And
the menu is predominantly local food, predominantly Southern, a lot of Southern food. It's food that is accessible to most people, most cultures. It's not fancy food. If you're
Yeah,
vegan,
yeah.
you're in heaven. We got lots of vegan options. If you're vegetarian, you have lots of vegetarian options. And if you like meat, we have meat options as well. But meat that is grass-fed, meat that is kosher, meat that is halal, meat that is actually healthy and not meat that's been processed in factories. And so we wanted to create a place that has all those elements together. And then we have performances and programs and poetry and cultural events. And the cultural events are the conduit really for bringing people together.
And it's the different kinds of self-expression. I remember seeing like poetry.
Poetry, we do lots of poetry.
Is it poetry slam kinds of stuff?
We do some slams, we do some literary poetry, we do some readings. We do lots of different types of poetry programs. We also do author programs. We have authors that come and speak. Some very well-known, internationally known authors, some local authors. They talk about a variety of issues. We have panel discussions like the one we had today, for instance. We've had panel discussions like that.
Even though it's somewhat of it's a restaurant, ostensibly, it's also, there's an attempt to make it a kind of public, or kind of a gathering place.
Right, a salon, so to speak. A modern day salon where people come together, exactly, civically engage with one another and sort of learn to be part of a community. People, you know, oftentimes we go to restaurants, we feel isolated, everybody's sitting in their own table, minding their own business. They come with the people they come with, they leave with the people they came with. In our place, it's more interactive. You may come by yourself and leave by yourself, that's fine, but oftentimes you'll come and have opportunities to interact with other people. And, you know, you can partake or not, but it gives you a chance to share some thoughts, share some ideas, engage civically with each other. Usually it's an important issue, whether it's the situation in Gaza today, whether it's Iran and all the issues that are going on in Iran, whether it's issues that are going on in Russia, whether it's issues that are going on in Europe or in our own backyard.
So is there
we talk about these issues.
Political conversation as well that goes on?
Often, yeah.
And is that as part of the fora that takes place there?
Well, we say we are a place where art, culture, and politics intentionally collide. So yes, we bring art, and we bring culture, and we bring politics together in a mix. To us, just having politics without the art and the culture doesn't really help. It doesn't advance anybody's conversation.
Do politicians participate in, do you find them among your clientele?
Sometimes, sure. Yeah. Sure, of course. People running for office or people that are local politicians or even national politicians. We've had lots of people come to our places.
And what kinds of things do you feel like have made the most difference, either from a social equity point of view, or from a in the community point of view, or for racial understanding, or cultural, religious tolerance, and so on? What kinds of things have you found, maybe even surprising, have had an impact?
Well, I think the poetry is always very impactful. You know, poetry touches people in a deep way that oftentimes they may not get touched by just hearing a program, for instance, just an ordinary program. So I think a lot of times it's people's stories. It's not really the facts and figures that people care so much about. It's about narratives. It's about changing the stories of one another and learning that we're all connected as human beings with the same emotions and the same loves and the same, you know, things that motivate us, things that make us upset, things that make us happy. All of those things are common motivators that we all have as human beings. And once we learn that we are connected in those ways, we are connected with one another emotionally, we can start to change the way we perceive one another. And suddenly you're not just an enemy or someone from a different background, but you're someone with a different perspective. And I want to hear your perspective because I love you as a human being. That's the connections we make.
One of the earlier panelists talked about love as being, and tuning into that, as being an important component in bringing the planet together in the way we need to be. We're either going to be together learning that capacity, growing that capacity, willingly, voluntarily, or of necessity.
Right,
somehow.
right, that's true. That's a good point, yeah.
And you talked about what we measure at an urban level. Have you come across, or have there emerged for you, I don't know if metrics is the right way to put it, but things that we could be looking at that would say, yes, this is signifying we're going in the right direction. When this happens, I know we're on the right path. This is a good sign. Have you come across those kinds of things that you've seen either in this culture or other cultures where you'd say these are the kinds of things to pay attention to in a good way as a sign of hopeful progress?
I think the sign of a civilized society is how it deals with its most vulnerable people. Whether it's people that are elderly, whether it's children, whether it's people that have some limitations, whether physical, mental, or other limitations. How we deal with those types of people, I think, determines how evolved we are as a community.
Well said. I think we don't remind ourselves of this enough.
Yeah.
And have places or practices stayed in your memory that you say, oh, that's really special, how people relate to these folks in this place, maybe some place you visited, or
I mean, I visited, I remember
tenderness?
visiting some senior homes and seeing how, in some senior homes, how seniors are treated. Even seniors that may not have the wealth to be able to hire the best caretakers, people that are on public assistance, who are treated with dignity, provided a wonderful home, being able to have nice warm meals and have a loving hand that touches them every now and then is a very important part, I think, of how I'd like to see ourselves as a society progressing, is how we deal with the elderly. We're all going to get old sooner or later.
I remember in Florida hearing about daycare and elder care being somehow co-located so that the little children could get the attention of the elders who were so tuned in and enlightened and enlivened and really wanted to offer their full attention to the little children in a way that not everyone else had that much time and that attention. And the little kids just brightened the elders' day, and to the extent that they could be with one another, just really added just a huge dimension to the quality of life for both. And the cultures that especially honor the elders. You know, I don't think America is known for that. I think, if anything, we have a kind of stereotypical disparaging on television and ads and so on. But I think of Asian cultures especially, possibly Middle Eastern cultures, possibly South American cultures, but especially Asian cultures, I think, are most known for that. Yeah, we
really, and I think it's not just about the elders, it's also about...
Or the most vulnerable, too. Also, it could be women, it could be kids or the poor.
And I think what we have to learn is it's not really, the benefit is not just for the elders, the benefit is for the society as a whole to harness that wisdom.
How do you recognize
that? Wisdom is valuable. Like, there's a reason why these people have learned and survived all these years. They've learned so much, they're able to give back so much of what they've learned, and we tend to shun them and shut them out. I think it is a problem for us. We are a fast-moving society that's always looking for change, always looking for something new, always looking for the next shiny object to run after. And I think we have a lot to learn from other cultures, like the Far Eastern cultures or Middle Eastern cultures, in fact, where the elders are considered a asset. They're actually looked upon as a source of wisdom, a source of connecting the cultures and connecting different generations to one another, as opposed to starting over again every time we have a new generation.
Yeah. And it's the heritage that they bear with them, that they've survived for so long. But it's also, when you spoke, it had me thinking, it's also who we become as we offer that kind of an honoring, and being the version of ourselves we might like better and enjoy more, and being that version of ourselves might reflect, this society is going pretty well. If these people are growing in this way, that they express this respect and affection for these and attention to these other folks. And I think, actually, it hasn't been spoken about much here today, but I think it could apply to other species as well. So often we're thinking it's all about the people, and it is to a great extent, but also offering attention to those with whom we share a planet, who are not necessarily human as well.
We have so much to learn from them. We have so much to learn from other species. We have, in the way how they are interrelated, interconnected. There's a book by Peter Miller called The Smart Swarm that I recommend very highly for anybody to read. It's a book that talks about the ability of certain species, insects in particular, they talks about ants and talks about bees, to work in a communal setting without leadership, and yet be able to advance the species in a positive way.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.